Good afternoon. Welcome to practice. My name is Alyssa, if we haven't met. This is a Yin Yoga practice. This offering is really important to me because it's an offering of balance. Yin or restorative practice or softer, quieter, more intuitive practices are often dismissed as nothing because they aren't as bold or product oriented, maybe not as loud or valued by the dominant culture, less commodifiable in a certain way. And therefore, the practice of it is always revolutionary, of giving yourself real time to turn towards what is, to be soft, to listen to your own ability to self heal, to sit with things as they are without taking action, etc., and so on. And to be reflective and receptive from this sort of slower, gentler, maybe a more compassionate side of things. That's the offering. This week, I've been thinking and speaking a little bit about what it's like to hold incongruency. I think a lot about being able to hold an apple and an orange in your hand, this sort of economy of being able to understand different things or ideas or things that seem disparate entirely, or maybe seem oppositional. Yin is a great practice for that because it comes from yin and yang, this oppositional duality in which all things are polar, but also all things are connected, right? You can never really detach yourself or become dualistic. We can use dualism as a way to sort of examine non duality or the continuum of all things. So, as we work today, I want to say that when I first came to this practice, it for me was incongruous. I was a very young personality, and I suppose still am. Have a lot of energy and heat, a lot of I don't know, a lot of that sort of fast, quick business, busyness, as it were. And so coming to this sort of quiet stillness was difficult for me, challenging in its own way. And so if that's true for you, you might let that be the challenge today. Let yourself notice how things are. Could it be true that you are attempting to relax when also not relaxed? Can you practice seeking comfort even when you are uncomfortable? Can you be at ease even when nothing is easy? And I think that because of that, this practice is nice because it doesn't offer you any promises. There's no promise that things will change, even though there is an exercise going on in your connective tissues, your fascia, myofascia, bones and joints, etc. But we're really seeking this process oriented way of being, and process lets us have it all. You don't necessarily have to edit, though we often find that along the way we figure out what we don't need anymore, like this bee that's hanging out with me right now. We figure out what we do need. Yeah, so I'm outside, and there's always at least a couple of wasp-related incidences. Sometimes my dogs or other animals come through. So those are my given circumstances. You might acknowledge yours as well. And for this practice, if you have a couple books or if you have yoga blocks, you might want to use them. I suggest we do a little bit of a supported bridge pose. You might consider if you're lying on your back with your feet on the ground and knees bent, what kind of under prop you'd like to use. Sometimes a bolster or even bringing your pelvis up onto a low chair or something like that, low couch can be helpful. I also have a folded up, like couch blanket, like a plush blanket. Those sorts of things can be helpful as well because you can change the heights. But please feel free to be creative with props so that you feel supported. It is possible to do a yin practice even if you don't have any props, but really consider what is kind in those circumstances as well. All right, I like to begin by uniting with 3 rounds of the seed sound of Om. I offer Om as a secular chant, acknowledging the idea of interconnection between all things, this continuum, thus our efficacy and our responsibility inside of that network. For any reason at all, Oming or chanting isn't for you, or perhaps you're in a space where it's not appropriate right now, it's okay to sit with us in presence instead. Many good reasons to make that discernment. Otherwise, you can let your hands fall into any position. It doesn't draw too much unnecessary attention to them. Neither close your eyes or downcast your gaze at one spot. Stack your skull over your pelvis. And remember, the positioning is not as important as the intention. So if it needs to be other than this, let it be other than this. And let your experience be valid even as you pick and choose. To clear and prepare the energetic channel of the body, take a deep inhale in through your nose. And open mouth, exhale, HA. Inhale, prepare for Om. Take a long inhale in through your nose and a slow exhale out. And today we'll begin in the long-winged butterfly posture, which is a seated pose. I suggest, because you may fold forward, that you might want to sit up on the edge of something. I'm going to utilize this folded blanket. And if you sit up on the edge of something, the intent is really to sit sort of on the edge of it, like your choir teacher wants you to sit on the edge of the chair, so that you can pull your pelvis back underneath, so you're tilted forward, top of your pelvis. And that way you have a little more space in your hip sockets and maybe a little less pressure in your back. And the height might be higher or lower. You can even choose a chair if you wish. And then the soles of the feet together and the knees can be wide. And a lot of yang practices, more active yoga practices, you're bringing your heels towards your groin to sort of press the feet together. In this version, legs are longer. You could choose to roll up towels or to utilize blocks underneath your knees at whatever height feels best, especially if you start to feel a lot of tugging sensations, and support would be useful. Now we're folding forward. You might fold over nothing and get yourself with your hands. You might choose to set up props, bolsters, maybe cushions or blocks. And you could catch your head with a prop. You could also choose to let your head hang to gravity. Some of us won't fold forward. You might stay upright instead, and that's okay. Breathing and listening to the sensations that emerge in your body. And here in this first posture, I generally like to go over what our intention is as far as the pragmatics of practice. You may know it quite well, but I've been told that it can be soothing and comforting to be reminded of those intentions. We use this correspondence of yin and yang, and really that's always about correspondence, right? You know, like going on a light jog is yin in comparison to running an 100-mile race, right? So that's always how it's going to be, and there's lots of scale of comparison. So if you come across decision making, you might just consider, what is the more yin option, what is more sustainable, what is more kind, what allows for more space and ease. Um, Having said that, that attitudinal shift, we set up the pragmatics of our postural work and the altar of the body, the ritual work that we do, so that it can exercise our connective tissues, bones, fascia, myofascia. And we do a lot of this with compression, which is different than a lot of other types of yoga, which tell you not to compress anything. Here we are trying to give soft compression, supported compression, nothing extreme, into joints and into areas of the body to reshape our connective tissue and to sort of move its liquid state around a little bit in the body to release undue knots, etc., and so on. So we use props to prop ourselves up. We utilize this point of view on ease and softness to give us some appropriate amount of threshold for the connective tissue, which is different than when we're working muscle. We use 3 tattvas or guidelines to do this work. The first is pertinent depth. Some people call it the edge. I've called it that before, but I think sometimes we think of standing at the edge of a precipice, whereas in yin, you'd be like back in the parking lot at the national park, you know, as opposed to on the edge. Somewhere where you can have experience, where you know something's happening, where you feel something, but it's subtle, soft kind of ease, of available relaxation, as much as is possible for you. And so you want to prop yourself up with props. If you've got them, prop yourself up with stools and chairs and blankets, all those things, so that you have the ability to relax muscle tissue and we can put that compression into connective tissue. It should always be kind. It doesn't have to be intense. You can always change it throughout. If it needs to become a little bit softer, there's always the availability to do that. Having said that, our second tattva, second guideline is stillness, because as soon as you move, it becomes muscular. So if you're fidgety like me, you might sit with those impulses to scratch every itch, etc., just for a couple of breaths, really kindly. And then if you still need to scratch it, you can. Otherwise, give yourself a little bit of space to be still, to allow for heaviness, not holding still. And you're never stuck or trapped. If you need to move, any reason at all, it's always okay to come up and out, to rest on your back or find a seat to process sensation. It's always okay to do it in some different way altogether. It's always okay to adjust depth. Maybe you need more support. Sometimes it's like things have become a little bit less tight and tense, and you need more space to let the body unravel. And then our last tattva is time. We sustain the edge in stillness over the course of time. If you see me looking at something suspiciously, I'm trying to see the timer on my phone so that I know how long we've been in the posture. There's no direct alchemy to that. Everyone's opinion is different. I do think that having the time to stay long enough that you have effect, you're able to get over those first hubs of tension in the body and in the muscles so that we can work deep into the mind, into the connective tissue, into the self, is useful. But if it starts to become too long, especially if this is a new practice, it's something that you do build stamina in, like anything else. So you might just decide that you're gonna, skip forward to the next pose in the video because 2 minutes is all you're gonna do, or you're gonna do the halfway marks or something like that. Know that sometimes discomfort eases over time. Know that sometimes it grows. And that discomfort isn't necessarily a sign you're doing something wrong. But anything intense, anything sharp, you want to back away from. Keep it on the kind side of things. And that you're welcome to do this practice however you wish to. I ask only that you don't use it as a source of violence for yourself or others. To the best of your ability, try to practice kindness and realness with yourself. And give yourself space to utilize the tools so that you can practice awareness. Really, this idea of consciousness practice, of being able to sit with our thoughts, sit with all of the many things that gel, the many things that don't gel, that live in the universe of our perception and ourselves, to realize how much of it is in the lens of our perception as opposed to the truth of how things are, is really the work of great value here. You will definitely reorganize the body. It can be therapeutic, right? But let the time be of awareness, almost a meditation practice. And if you start to float off, come back to your breath. I'll often give you halfway marks, final minute marks. We're definitely more than halfway through this first hold. In fact, about 2 minutes left here. I'll sometimes give you a final minute mark. Those are good times to notice whether you need to adjust or not and do so. Good times to check in with your own resiliency. There's nothing to prove by staying in the pose. If something starts to tingle or it doesn't feel right, allow it to change. Try not to escape with quickness or anything like that. Stay intuitive, aware, even in those exiting processes. There we go. Very gently and slowly begin to release your hold in this pose and take your time. It really can be 5 or 6, maybe 10 rounds of breath even to transition from pose to pose. And I urge you to explore not only an idea of like how you think of your body as an object where, you're going to have to stretch this thing or there's always pain there, but also to think about the quality of your movements and actions, how they leave an imprint, an impression, an energy, an emotion, a rasa of how things are for you. For a lot of us, you might use your hands to manually put the soles of your feet on the mat. Take your hands behind you and drop your heart up towards the sun like you're showing your face to the sky, and drop your legs from side to side a few times if you wish. All right. We're going to continue this into a twist. So the next time that your legs are going to the right, continue to drop them to the right and keep on turning. I'm going to turn my whole body so I can turn towards you. And I'm going to come off my lift because for me, sitting flat is comfortable here. And once you drop your knees over, your legs can sort of be in this stag leap position. It doesn't have to be 90-degree bends or anything like that. They can be a little closer. Sometimes the front heel meets the back knee. Sometimes wider feels better. And for me, I end up lifting my back butt cheek off the ground. And you keep on turning. You can fold forward kind of over your front knee, work into the hip. You can turn more to the right and come down onto a lift. Some people will twist even further and thread their left arm under their right and turn their left cheek to the earth. You can choose those things along the way. We will do both sides of this posture, which is a twist. And perhaps you can take this opportunity to revel in the enoughness, whatever enoughness you happen to have access to, that there's enough time, that you have enough grace for yourself, that there's enough access to whatever form of practice, of awareness practice you're cultivating. And all of these postures allow intuition to guide you, especially because you and I are not only in a different room or space than each other, but also in different times. You really have to find that responsibility for where your body should go. You can always send me questions, etc., but usually the information is there for you if you're paying attention, right? What feels like support, and especially if what feels good at first always evaporates over time, you may just have an expectation of depth of where you think you're supposed to be or where you're accustomed to, as opposed to how things are. And continue to seek the truth of how things are whenever you can. We'll hold for time. You're about halfway through your time in this pose on this side. Continue to notice if there are any particular patterns in the body, perhaps in the thoughts, where the things held. And just like patterns of belief and identity and narrative, patterns in the body often are undetectable at first. They're almost, flying below the radar. When you find them, try to be kind. Often you needed them, use them to survive. You can vet from there whether they're useful to you. And even then, practicing letting them go will likely take repetition as well. Your final minute in this hold. With great kindness, slowness, over the course of the next 5 to 10 rounds of your own slow breath, begin to draw yourself out of this posture. You might press yourself up away from the ground, take the time that you need to. Some of us find that being still and allowing feeling and awareness to come is a good way. Some of us will find movement, but try not to sort of shake off anything necessarily. Be with it long enough to discern how it is. You might take the legs out long. I like to manually roll the thighs in and out or place the soles of the feet on the mat once more. You could put your feet on the ground and knock your knees from side to side once more. Eventually dropping your knees over to the left and continuing that drop to the left. Turn the body to the left and come down perhaps onto a lift. And things might be the same from side to side. They might be different. You might find yourself in a sort of similar sensation pattern or pathway. You might find that things need to be adjusted for the reality of the joints over here. There's a lot of different ideas about going from the right to the left, which is yet another duality that we often confuse. Because, where does the left become the right and where does the right become the left? But remember that the body isn't organized symmetrically. That's an aesthetic. Symmetry is one of the many organizational patterns involved. Silence is sort of the other secret hidden quality. There are definitely many yin experiences where you listen to wonderful intentional music, etc., even where you add the production of chanting, of audible sound from the body or musical sound from an instrument, etc. You might also consider, though, how silence is for you, and how things sort of go and are for you when silence is available. Remembering that silence is something. Mm. You're halfway through your time on this side in this pose. You're in your final minute in this hold. I'm going to go attend to my dog who's being a pill. Oakland, lay down. Lay down right now. You lay down right now. Lay down. There we go. All right. Now that my dog is laying down, you can go ahead and slowly exit your posture. Over the next 5 to 6 rounds of breath, take your time to slowly come up and out. It's just the truth of how things are. Feel free to drop your legs from side to side once more to find any intuitive movement, contact movement that feels good for you. Then we'll come into another seated forward fold. So if you're on a timeline longer than mine, do take your time, but it always takes me a few moments to get all set up here. So if you're coming up onto a lift, again, tilting the pelvis so we have this ability to start to fold forward and down from the crease of the hips as opposed to from the curling of the spine. The spine's going to curl. It's just like what it does. As you fold forward, your legs are close, but you don't have to hold them together. Some people's will naturally roll in or out. Your toes might turn in or out. Come forward and down to hang your upper body. Now, for some people, coming forward isn't even required. You could do this against a wall, with a block between the wall and your back at a setting that feels supportive, and breathe. If you're folding forward and you would like to round, sometimes you can create a round in your lower back by having an obstacle to roll over. A rolled up yoga mat works too. You could also use a bolster to fold forward over your legs. Once you've discerned the height of what you'd like to fold over, in fact, you might not need anything at all, you could support your head with a prop, stack of books, a pillow. If you feel like you need to, you could also roll up something behind the back of your knees, like a yoga mat or a towel, so that your knees are in a slightly bent position. If you feel like the insertion of your hamstring at the back of the knee or up underneath your sitting bone at your pelvis feels a little bit more affected than anything else in your body, feel free to do that. And again, we'll stay for time. In this pose, as with so many, for some people, it's really a kind and sort of soft place, an internal, safe kind of feeling. For some of us, it's just like hamstring purgatory or a lot of trepidation that comes from the lower back. And sometimes that's really just our anatomy. There's nothing about you necessarily or your actions that have made you any one way. And everything you do makes you. So even in this moment of remaking, almost more prudent than what had been made before. More important. Halfway. Very gently releasing your posture. You might walk your way up one hand at a time. Once you arrive at the top of the thing, you're always welcome yet again to address. Sometimes twisting is a nice way. If you've been folding or back bending, doing something in the sort of more frontal plane of action, you might find something on a different plane of access always. All right, we're going to do a little more folding. This is called half butterfly, or Janya Shirshasana is often what it's called in more Ayurvedic traditions. So you might bring the sole of your right foot to your inner left thigh. It could also be wider. Sometimes that feels better in people's bodies, be closer together. And then you have options as well about how you fold forward. You could go direct over the front of the shape, like your square over your hips. You could turn and fold over your left leg. Some people turn and fold over the right leg. Some people also turn and side body bend over. I myself am going to fold forward, but I'll let you know when we're halfway through. So if you think you want to do more than one variation, that way you have some options. And again, take your time. There is enough time. Often we sort of feel like we have to rush in or out. All the time, some questions emerge in yoga about efficiency, and I think it's pertinent to be efficient, but it's part of that sort of tyranny of productivity. The idea that value comes from busyness. It's just actually a way to oppress the poor and the working class. Consider that being kind, soft, easy, gentle, removing the schedule to a degree for some period of time is its own sort of revolutionary act. Revolution from within. And you're about halfway through your time in this hold on this side. You're here in your final minute. With great ease, begin to release your hold on this side, your time in this pose, and come up. Again, you might just take some time to be neutral in the center. You might move and act to do what you need to do, to counteract action that you've taken. Move into the opposite side when you're ready. Excuse me. And you're always welcome to let your practice be in reality. So while it always seems like you're going to have that perfect practice where you stay still the whole time, um, there's no need to sort of set an idea of value based on the structure of the practice. The value is on the focus spent, right? The time with. And again, I'll give you the halfway mark so that you know, and also so that if you want to do different variation, you can at that point. Halfway. Final minute. Kindly begin to release your time in this pose. In whatever position you're in, come upright. You might let your legs come long. Drop your hips or your knees from side to side a few times. The rest of this practice will be done on the back, but you might want to get props and, a blanket or a sweatshirt, whatever you might need for the end of class nearby. I'm going to turn sideways in a moment, but the first posture, lying on our back, is going to be the banana posture. It's a form of half moon. So if you were looking at a bird's eye view, someone doing the pose, they'd be lying on their back, the front of the body face up, but they look sort of like a banana or a half moon with the feet to one side, the shoulders to one side, and the hips to the opposite side, so you curve along. A side bend instead of a twist. I say this only because we'll do a twist a little bit later, so we'll do the side bend first. So I'm going to lie down facing this way. Make sure my props are somewhere I can get at them if I need them. And I like to compress the right side of my body first, but you can really do it either way. So I take the whole of my body to the left side of my mat or space and lie on the back with the face up. And then I walk my feet over to the right side and I lift my upper body up by my elbows and kind of scooch over. You can have your arms by your sides. You can take them up overhead. Some people grab for their elbows or their hands. You might feel one butt cheek lift more than the other. If you have a sandbag or cat or something like that that could weight down your hip, you're welcome to apply it. You're also welcome to cross your left ankle over your right, or alternatively, your right ankle over your left if it feels useful and good. Let me remain in this shape over the course of time. Doing side body stretching and these sort of diagonal and side body actions are often neglected in some forms of movement, definitely in some forms of yoga where we practice facing the front all the time. For some people, poses like this will feel dense or effective. You'll feel something sort of tight or resistant right away. For some of us, there will be subtlety and then it will grow. Hi, Oakland. And you're about halfway through your time on this side. final minute. Very slowly begin to unwind. You can either bring your hips to where the rest of your body is, or I like to bring my legs and my shoulders back to neutral and take a few moments letting things unwind before going to the opposite side, the right side of the mat, and crossing the feet over to the left and shifting the torso over. And beginning again to allow yourself to arrive in whatever version of the posture feels sustainable, kind, wearable for the next few minutes. Continue to direct your attention towards your experience in the present tense. You're about halfway through your hold in this pose on this side. And try not to overmanage your neck or your jaw. I tend to have resting yoga face a lot, and sort of tension that lives in the brow or in the jaw. If that's you, just notice if it creeps in even when you seemingly are relaxed otherwise. I know for some folks, we've been taught that there's a narrative of value in our tension. Our tension proves we're working. Things have been difficult, that there's been a sacrifice of our sense of wellness so that we could achieve a goal. Remember that it is possible for both things to happen. Perhaps you could apply work, effort, energy without having to sacrifice your own wellness to be valuable. Very slowly. Over time, begin to release your posture on this side. You might come back to a neutral pose once more. Again, create a sense of permission to move, a sense of permission to experiment and explore. We're going to move next into the bridge posture. The supported form of this pose has its own context. You may have done it without support. You could also do it that way if you wanted to in this practice. I like the supported form. You can let the internal organs feel supported and inverted with minimal effort from the body. To what one spine can tolerate, another. Consider that. You're going to place a block underneath your sacrum. I like this mid height or the tall height, but the lowest height is my recommendation for most folks. You can always take it up a notch if you need to. Once you found the setting for you, make sure it's not in the curve of your lower back so your hips are dropping, and instead underneath your sacrum, which is the bony part of the back of your pelvis. And allow yourself to settle down into ease and relaxation. You can always take your legs into a different shape. A lot of people do. They will take the legs out long. That's a lot in the lower back for some, and very comfortable and kind for others. Some people walk the feet wide and drop the knees in. Take the goddess shape with the soles of the feet together and the knees wide like butterfly. Or legs up an imaginary wall where you float your feet towards the sky or the ceiling. Relax your jaw, soften your tongue and teeth. Allow yourself to be where you are right now. This is really our only true backward bend in this practice. It doesn't have to be extreme to be effective. About halfway through your hold in this pose. Remain in your posture. My dog has managed to get himself wrangled up, so I'm going to help him. So many animals in need this time around. You're here in your final minute. Very slowly and gently release your posture. Take your time to lift your hips up off of your prop, to release it out of your way. You might drop your knees gently from side to side a few times. We're going to go direct to twisting. So you can let your knees stay to the left at any point, and you might stack knees as such. Some people really like to place a block or a rolled up blanket between the knees to elevate and keep the hip compression down in the inside of the hip joint. Some folks will wrap their right leg all the way around their left in the twisted root or eagle leg form. You could also take your right leg over and let your left leg remain out long. You can also use lifts, right? You can catch your knee with a block or a folded up set of cushions. You're always welcome to tilt yourself up, right? If you need to be more upright in the torso to be at ease twisting, you can create a ramp or put your head up on a cushion. Once you're inside the shape, know that we'll be here for about 3 minutes on each side, which is actually pretty much our shortest hold of any posture for this whole of class. Allow yourself to settle in so that you get the benefit. A lot of yoga teachers have been taught to emphasize that you must keep your right shoulder down, but it really doesn't matter. You can put something underneath it if you like, especially if you're trying to hold it down. I recommend softening the muscles around it, letting weight and gravity pull on it, letting space emerge as opposed to forcing depth. With great care and attention, take your time to slowly unwind. Again, if there's movement or address that needs to happen from side to side, allow it to. When you're ready, drop your both knees over to the right side. You might take your left arm to the left. Some people it will feel really good, natural to drop your head to the left. For many of us, it'll feel like your neck is, doing a lot of work, or like there's tingling in the fingers or compression in the shoulder. And if that's true for you, you might just skip it. There's no requirement for the version of the thing you do. You can even turn your head the opposite way to the right. Very slowly begin to unwind back towards center. You might drop your knees from side to side or do any movements that feel good for you. And we'll take final resting. So you might take your legs out long. This might be a moment where you need to go grab a blanket or a sweatshirt, or you decide you need to go over to a comfy couch. We'll rest for a few minutes. If you know you'd like an extra long rest, you might pause the video so that you have the space to do that. If you know you need an extra short rest, you might also pause the video so that you have control over that. And then slowly lying down. You might lie on your back. You could choose a meditation seat if you'd prefer to sit upright. You could also lie on your side or your belly. You can choose any positioning that feels good for you, really. Allow yourself to come down to a place that you think will be sustainable in your body for a few minutes. And we'll do that. We'll rest for a few minutes. I'll call you up and out, and it's time to return. Until then, let your teeth soften away from one another. Let your skin slacken. Allow some ease and space to come into your facial muscles and your jaw, the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. You might choose to close the eyes or keep them open. Allow yourself to pay attention to how things really are. Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasti Navaditamastu Mavitvashavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If you're lying in rest and wish to remain as such, do. The time has come for you to begin to return. Go slowly to your natural and organic breath, and as it rises and falls gently and slowly, ask it to rise on purpose, to breathe with a little bit of intention. As that intentional movement of the breath in and out of the body starts to rise, write it into any intuitive movement you like, wiggle your fingers and toes, stretch out and up. Move your tongue over your teeth, scrunch and spread your face. In the next 5 or 6 rounds of breath, of moving, or maybe of stillness, take your time to roll onto your favorite side, gather your knees into your chest, and pause in the side body. Take a moment to practice gratitude for the contributing circumstances to your practice, the earth that nourishes you, the ancestors that came before, yours and those of the land that you occupy. I'm here on Straight Salish, Samish, and Lumi land. You might consider teachers of all kinds, knowledge of all lineages that has come to you in your lifetime, obstacles and difficulties, oppressions that have kept you from the practice, boons and privileges, gifts that have led the way, your own willingness to show up and process and be with what is, to practice power and peace, compassion and truth. When you're ready, use your top hand to press yourself up to a tall seat, and we'll seal in the practice together. As you do, that's a traditional chant, actually in a bunch of different lineages of yoga, but I know it through the Krishnamacharya lineage. It's another Vedic chant. Its overarching meaning, as with all Sanskrit, right? You'll lose something when I put it into English. There's other ways to think of those words and other meanings layered onto them and in them. But the overarching meaning is about our work of togetherness. It means may we together be protected, may we together know joy. May our work for the liberation of all be brilliant. May we not fight, hate, or dispute with one another. May our work seek to lead us to cosmic and universal peace. You wish you can fold your hands in the Anjali Mudra, that symbol of non-dualism and dualism, of non-duality coming to meeting place at the heart where the soul understands itself. If this symbol doesn't mean that for you, hold in the eye of your mind instead the idea of non-duality, where things meet, where they separate. Thank you for your time, your energy, your effort. If you wish, you can bring thumbs to third eye, acknowledging that the mind must always bow to the work of the heart. Bow to yourself to seal and practice. Thank you for practicing. Use this tool as you will. If you need anything, reach out. The donation avenues, the digital compensation or payment avenues are present. Half of all proceeds to all of my classes, video, Zoom, etc., this month of July will go to the Washington Black Trans Task Force. You can have a little more information if you look in the information about this video. There's links to the Lavender Rights Project and to the Black Trans Task Force information. Please check them out. And remember that the way that you're practicing is valid. If you didn't practice for 2 weeks, it's okay. If you're practicing suddenly all the time, it's okay. Your practice is putting one foot in front of the other. That's okay. Give yourself a little space to practice being who you are and know that your enoughness is present. Especially as you seek to sustain the work of change, the work of growth, the work of great shift in community. Thank you for your time and your effort. I really appreciate you and having you with me, and that you allow me to be a part of the work that you're doing. Reach out if you need anything. Otherwise, be well.